Hi, I am Stephanie Hawkenhall, an author, a speaker, and an educator of Love Misunderstood Institute, a nonprofit organization. I educate about bullying and how love is misunderstood when you're bullying others. Bullying happens everywhere and has no age range. To help you through bullying and the trauma associated with it, I am a certified forgiveness coach. I am an apprentice facilitator in trauma healing. I speak and educate groups at schools, churches, events, and seminars. I look forward to sharing with your group.
Hey, 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 you have just tuned into What is the Love Show? Where is the Love Show? Um, we talk about bullying and have conversations about bullying. I am your host. I am Stephanie Hawkenholm, and I want to introduce to you my co-host, Gene.
Hey,
This is Gene Williams. This is my son. He is my co-host. Where is the Love Show? We talk about bullying versus love and how um, important love is versus bullying. Bullying is any negative, controlling behavior towards others. And so we talk about that. We educate you about that, provide information about that, share stories, have questions. Um, and so I want to recap what we talked about on our last show. So, on our last show, we talked about a student that was bullied in his classroom. There was a death threat left in his cubbyhole. And so he told his mom about it. He was, of course, devastated. Um, and so his mom, in an effort to help him, started taking art and craft classes with him a couple days a week. So we talked about the impact of bullying, how bullying affects you in the long term, how it can affect you in the long term, and how traumatic it can be. So those are the kind of conversations that we have. Again, we talk about love versus bullying. Real love is being kind, humble, patient. Jean, you want to add anything?
understanding,
Gentle,
adaptable, gentle, compassionate.
yes. And we've talked. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, you go ahead. I was just
So
adjusting.
we have talked about compassion. We've talked about things to do to help your children, parents, to get uh, your children's attention, to get them to talk about bullying and what's going on in their life, because most times they won't just come to you and talk to you about it. They will um, keep it from you because they don't want the bully to bully them more. And that's what they're afraid of, some of them. And they are ashamed and feel guilty. Jean, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was going to say one of the, we talked about symptoms of bullying, and one of the first things is that the personality changes. Um,
Yeah.
so,
And so you want to tell them what to do when, when they notice personality changes with the child. What's some of the tips?
yeah, for sure. So, as the story that we talked about last week, the mom was really engaged with her son. That's one of the first things you have to engage. You notice the change in their personality, ask questions.
Yes.
Also, be very active in your child's life. The more attention that you show to them, the more they'll feel comfortable coming to you about anything, not just bullying, but anything in life. And that's what you want. That's the kind of relationship that you want with your kid. You want to be, you want to find that healthy balance between friendship and parenting. You got to have both in
You
order to have a
got to
healthy.
have,
Yeah,
yeah, you have to have both in order for them to trust you to come to you with information to protect them. They have to be able to trust you. They have to be able to, um, bring that information to you and know that they can feel safe.
right.
So, you want to add anything else about the story? You remember anything else, or about the impact of bullying? You want to reiterate?
No, I did want to say though that I don't remember her name now, but the mother, she was a great example of
Hmm.
how to engage. How, and she also not only engaged her son, but she also engaged at school to rectify the situation. So, it's very imperative to be active in your child's life, and also um, have a good connection with the school that they go to, or wherever they are.
Yes.
You need to be right on them. You need to be right on their
Yes.
shoulder. Hey, 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 where we go? What we doing? What's going on over there now, boy?
Right. And her name was LaWanda Hutchinson.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was very active and very interested and engaged in what was going on with him, and he knew that. So he was able to express that to her, and that's how he got his help. If you say you need help, then somebody can help you. If you don't say anything, they don't know and they can't help you.
Closed mouth don't get fed.
Right. So we have a guest today. So I want to introduce to you our guest. Um, I will tell you a little bit about her as a excuse me, as a qualified mental health professional and licensed ordained minister. Allysa Hupko, uh, LMSW. She's a social worker, owner, therapist of LifeQuest Counseling Solutions, LLC, has 23 years of experience working within social services to include early childhood development, welfare, domestic violence, working and caring for the emotionally challenged, displaced, at risk populations within the Wichita and surrounding areas. She embarked upon a journey of private practice to accommodate a more diverse population of needs within the therapeutic community. She enjoys the service of empowering individuals to live productive, holistic lifestyles. So, welcome to the show, Allysa Hupko.
Hello, hello, guys.
Hey, Allysa, how
Hey.
are you?
Doing pretty good today. It's a Sunday, so it's a fun day for me.
Oh yeah.
That's
Hmm.
good. So, Allysa is going to help us by bringing more information to us to help us understand things that we can do, ways that we can provide help and support to people that are being bullied. And so that's what she's going to be sharing with us today. So, again, welcome, Allysa. We appreciate you coming and providing information for us.
No problem. I'm glad to be here. Consider it an honor, actually. Anytime we can have these discussions, I really feel like a lot of things can be unraveled and prevented through just having discussions.
Yes.
So, I'm just really glad to be here to kind of shed some light on kind of what I've seen and just give some more information and resources for those who may be looking for more resources.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Glad to have you.
You can go ahead and share uh, some stuff that you have.
Sure, sure. Okay, so what I kind of want to talk about is the trauma cycle a little bit because sometimes we don't understand or we have our own concept of what trauma is, but trauma can be anything. One of the things that I was involved in this past weekend, somebody talked about how just being born can be traumatic for some folks. So we've all experienced some type of varying level of trauma. There are different categories of trauma. There would be like primary trauma or the first level of trauma would be, it would look like just one single event that a
Mhm.
person would have an encounter with that would be considered traumatic. That would be, for instance, like maybe they were in a car wreck, or maybe being born is trauma, or adoption, things like that. Just a single event trauma. And then you move on to the next level of trauma that looks like it is more over a span of time. So maybe you're in a home where you've witnessed domestic violence over the course of time, and so that's another level of trauma. And then you have complex trauma that is consistent of varied levels of trauma that's gone on for pretty much the duration of a person's life. So that looks like maybe you were born, maybe you had a rough birth, then you were adopted, then you were put back into the system, then you were put into a situation where maybe there was some physical, emotional, or some types of abuse that have gone on. So that gives you an idea over the course of time, the complexity of trauma that's gone on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
Now, when we're looking at that, what we understand that any type of abuse that kids go through, whether it's bullying or anything, it leads to some basic things. We already know this through data and stats, that they tend to struggle more with maladaptive ways of thinking and behaving. Anything between those ages of 0 and 5, that's considered the foundation for life, right?
Right.
That's where we're learning social emotional connections, all of our development, how we're working with people, how we're working with agencies, things like that. And if you have traumas that go on in that place of, between 0 to 5, it just makes you very vulnerable to maladaptive ways of thinking and behaving.
Right.
So we see kiddos more prone to mental health conditions, like clinical mental health conditions, anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, eating disturbances, chronic health situations and scenarios, decreased academic achievement. We also can see them maybe where they were looking at loving school, maybe in that primary stages, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, they love school. And then all of a sudden, we don't want to go to school. We don't want to have anything
Yeah.
to do with school, type of a
Yeah.
thing. And then a very small percentage of those folks go on, if we talked about the levels of trauma, if they have had complex trauma over a significant time span in their life space, that makes them highly vulnerable to acting out in more violent measures.
Yes.
A lot of some of the mass shootings and violent things that we've seen go on, when you go back and trace it, it's like 12 to 15, 12 out of the 15 that I've been able to even do just a simple basic research on, those students and children were, the product of bullying. So
Wow.
it is a huge epidemic in
Yeah.
our society. And it's not just at schools.
Right.
Yeah. Not at all.
It's not just at
Everywhere.
schools. It's everywhere. And maybe if you don't mind, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about that, about where bullying actually shows up. It shows up a lot in institutions.
Yeah.
That's something that we don't want to talk about. It's along the lines of what we've seen going on with racial disparity and Black Lives Matter and all of that. That's just the tip of the iceberg of
Yeah.
kind of dealing with some of the more systematic situations that affect our children on a daily.
Yeah.
Um, we know that brown and black communities are more susceptible, but we're not singled out. Bullying, it's not specific to gender or
No.
ethnicity or
Age.
socioeconomics,
Yeah.
age, none of that. It really isn't. We do know from data that there are some individuals that are more prone to falling into the category of being bullied. And that would consist of your brown and black communities, your Asian communities, your LGBT communities, individuals that have disabilities or have any type of difference whatsoever. They're going to be more of a target as well.
Right.
So we do,
Economic people and
Right.
socioeconomic backgrounds
yes,
experience bullying too as well. I apologize for, but we've talked about that in the last week or so, in the last few weeks, last
yeah.
few shows.
And
Yeah.
we don't even talk about the brown on brown
Yeah.
bullying. But
Right.
Right.
coming from California, I just had an opportunity to speak about this yesterday. Coming from California, I was a Navy brat. So,
Yeah.
in the Navy or in the military period, it's its own culture. Everybody
Yes.
takes care of
Right.
everybody.
Yes.
When I moved from California to Kansas as a child, there was a rude awakening
Yeah.
that because you look different, you're not
Yeah.
us and we're
Yeah.
Right.
not. And so that dynamic exists as well. When we're looking at institutional, though, we're going to be looking at foster care systems. We're going to be looking at police, JDF or juvenile detention. We're going to be looking at school and other court systems that involve children. A lot of times there's a lot of behavior that goes on in those institutional organizations that's it's just extremely aggressive. It doesn't allow them to have a voice. It doesn't respect them and their boundaries. And so there's lots of bullying that goes on in that in those particular arenas as well.
Wow.
Right.
And
Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I don't know if you guys remember this, but kind of back when I was growing up, it was still kind of one of those things that children are to be seen but not heard.
yeah.
And as a result of that, there's a power and control thing that goes on there in
Yeah.
the minds of children where adults are concerned. And there's lots of intimidation, there's lots of manipulation, there's lots of things that go on from that type of thinking, if you're not careful, that make children feel as though they are powerless and they
And
don't
be
have a
valued.
voice. Yes. And particularly dealing with relatives and things like that. I think that creates a really crazy foundation for lots of abuse to go on
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
where kids are not talking because I don't have a voice. I'm here. I've got to do and respond, even when I don't feel comfortable being with this particular relative. Things
Yeah.
along those lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we're talking about bullying specifically, let's look at some of the things that go on with that. There's corrosion. I'm probably not saying that right. But
Color.
yeah, there we go. It
Right.
threats, threatening, embarrassing people openly, embarrassing children embarrassing people openly. Maybe you don't have the latest fashion. Maybe your hair isn't kept up.
Yep.
Um, so there's that type of behavior. I'm going to make you fit into a particular space that I want you to fit in, or make fun of you in
Yeah.
that particular way.
Yeah.
Um, there's using intimidation. I'm going to make you afraid. I'm going to make you feel unsafe. I'm going to throw things. I'm going to break things. I'm going to mess with your pets. These are all kinds of things that go on with using intimidation. And I'm sure there's more that we can tie in this
Isolate
particular.
and triangulate.
Yes. Yes. Social media has opened up a whole new world
Oh yeah.
Right.
for bullies to systematically and strategically use intimidation with
Yes.
photos. And I've just seen some really, really, really ugly things with some of the people that come to me, the things that they have to go through. Um,
Cyberbullying.
yes.
Cyberbullying is a huge thing because so many people are on social media, and cyberbullying is uh, uh, talking negatively about somebody in an email, in a text message, and social media. Like I said, social media is a big platform for cyberbullying.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I think that puts a little bit more pressure on teachers, leaders, parents, uncles, so forth and so on, since it does take a village, right? None of us are exempt from the responsibility of the roles that we play in young people's lives. We
Yeah.
all have a part to play
Right.
in children's lives and in their development and ensuring that they're safe.
Yeah.
Um, it does put a little bit more strain on us, those of us who are a little bit more seasoned in age, for us to learn how to navigate some of the social media cyber arena.
Yeah.
Uh, we need to be knowledgeable because our kids are on it, our grandkids are on it.
Yes.
And we've got to have some knowledge of how and what that looks like and how to navigate those spaces to keep them
Yes.
Right.
safe.
And also
Um,
be present, in the midst of our children being on things like that. There was a situation where my daughter was on Roblox, I believe, and someone just kept like messing with her and saying crazy things in the chat to her. And, so I even started limiting her time playing that game, and then when she had to play it around me so I could see what's going on. You know, I think that's
yeah,
important.
I do too. I do too, because it's like a whole world that opens up. They can just be exposed to anything. Some of them are not developmentally at a space where they need to even be exposed to that. Cognitively, they're not
Yeah.
at that place. Remember, we were kind
Yeah.
of talking about that 0 to 5. Well, after 0 to 5, you move into 5 to 12. That's a very critical stage of development.
Right,
Lots of things are going on socially, lots of things are going on within their bodies. There definitely needs to be oversight and monitoring. Please don't let your kids loose and have phones and have access to internet and you don't know what's going on. And then
Right.
we wonder why tragedy happens. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that that's the cause of it, but it can definitely be a proactive measure that we put in place to
right,
be
Right.
to set limits and to know what's going on with your kids for sure.
right,
And we're seeing through the bullying the bullying in the news that we see is a lot of 5 years, ages 5 years to 12 years committing suicide. So you have to know what they're doing. You have to know who they're talking to. You have to get involved just like Gene did, when he found out, that about what was going on, with Gianna, in roadblocks, he let play it around me so I can see. You
Hmm.
have to get involved. You can't be so doggone tired all the time. You don't know what your kids are doing because these phones, they're getting them at such young ages. And so a lot of parents are talking about, well, they're busy on their phone, so they're okay. They're not bothering me. That's not the way to look at that. Yeah, they
right.
get bullied on games,
In the chat rooms, yeah,
and,
Hmm.
absolutely.
and it
Yeah.
is heartbreaking. They call it gaming, is what they call
Mhm,
it.
mhm,
Bullying on the game. They call it gaming, and people have gotten killed from that too. Um,
mhm,
from coming from California to Kansas a few years ago. That happened. A guy was, bullying on the gaming, and then he came to Wichita where the person lived. So you can't tell people where you live, but he came to where the guy lived and killed the guy. So yeah, it
Wow.
happens on games. You have to be very aware of what's going on with your kids and your grandkids, with your relatives, to find out who they're talking to, what they're doing. Don't just let them be on their phone. You don't know what they're doing. You gotta look to
and I
see what.
think, yeah, you bring up a really good point because I had a conversation with a parent, and I'm a parent. I know you guys are parents here, where a parent was taking it way to the other extreme, way to the other extreme. This child was between the ages of, I want to say 14 and 16, maybe it might have been 12 and 14. Now that I think about it. But her way of navigating and managing everything was, I'm going to control everything that comes through your hands.
Oh yeah.
So you don't have a phone, it's got to run through me. You don't have access to your internet because I'm going to get in and have your passcodes and know what's going on in every
Yeah,
part of your life. And I'm going to say there's a healthy balance.
Right. Agreed.
There is a healthy balance because then you start becoming a bully as a
You're right.
parent. And unfortunately, that happens too. And we don't want to talk about that. But
Right.
right.
when you're operating from a place of anxiety, fear, dread, torment, and you're raising and trying to train and raise up children, mm, I don't know. I think we need to have a healthy balance. And I think a healthy balance is just like Jean said, you know what? Bring that out here. I want to hear what you guys have going on. I
Right.
want to know where you're at and what you're doing. And I think being able to approach your children from that space where you're being proactive and you're helping them to set up boundaries that are appropriate, that's healthy parenting.
Right.
And that's being proactive because you're giving them space to have autonomy when
Right.
that's
Yeah.
appropriate. They
Yeah.
need to be able to learn to kind of not have you in their face solving their problems every day, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Especially during that developmental stage of 12 to 16. There's a lot going on socially and emotionally with your young person.
Yes.
They've got to have some spaces and places where they kind of bump their knees a little bit in a safe place. And one of the things that Jean said, relationship is key.
Yes.
It's key. It only takes one person to combat something crazy that a kid is going through
Right.
or something crazy that a kid's come out of. It only takes one person that they
Right.
can connect with that can offset and change the trajectory of their lives.
Yes.
Yes.
And if
Absolutely.
we're trying to power and control them, you will not have relationship. And that's more scarier to me as a parent and as a leader and as a potential grandma in the future.
Right.
It's more scary for me to think that you don't have a relationship with me
Right.
Right.
and then you
And what
let
also
me to the wolves.
right. And what transpires there is one or two things. You're controlling and manipulative of the child. So either they grow up and get into a relationship like that, or they become that person.
Yes, the likelihood of both just rises, it rises greatly when they're exposed to that type of parenting. And I've had parents get mad at me and all kinds of different things because they come from the old school. And I'm not knocking old school. There's a
Right.
place for it. However, we've got kids that are using electronics in school, right? They're using
Yeah.
it through their jobs. They're using it everywhere. So for you to strip them of that, I just don't think that's sustainable. And I don't think that that creates an environment with them where they're going to be honest with you.
Right.
Right.
And
It's
then
not
that's just,
healthy either.
no. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
And then they're going to hide and sneak and do things at that point because if that's what they want to do, they're going to make a way to do it.
Mhm.
There's a couple questions for you here, Alyssa. One is, Jean, did you have something you want to add?
No, no. I was going to look at the questions. You go.
Okay. Some kids are getting into complicated social media outlets like reality and virtual reality at early ages. What's your take on that?
I really think that because we're in such an advanced technology era, and let's just put it like that, everything is flipped, everything is changing. Uh, I think to say no to those things is just, I'm not sure that that's the path to take for that. I do think that as things come to the forefront, like reality and virtual reality and things like that, once again, parents must be proactive. Parents must have relationships. I do believe time restraints and boundaries need to be put on those particular outlets. And I feel as though because things are rapidly changing, just when you get your hand on one thing, something new is being birthed. I think
Yeah,
we need to have conversations about what the safety factor looks like utilizing those outlets. It's
yeah,
something that needs to be taught at school. It's something definitely you need to be teaching it in your house,
yeah.
Right.
or with the children that you influence. But yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah. And I
One,
also think that it should be again engaging with your child or the child that you influence, knowing and making sure that whatever they're playing is age appropriate. Like there are
Uh,
some games that some levels to certain games that certain age kids shouldn't be on at all until they get to a certain maturity.
I
So
agree.
yeah,
Yeah, that
and also,
developmental, that age appropriateness is key with
yeah.
everything, not just that, but
right,
yes.
right, agreed.
Another our statement is, I was at the store earlier today, and the cashier said that her 5-year-old was asking for an iPhone 13. She said she doesn't even have one of those herself. So, what do you say about? I mean, kids want the latest, want the latest.
No, no, no.
Once again, we go back to age appropriate,
Again,
activities and developmentally appropriate activities. There's no way alive that I'm handing my 5-year-old the keys to my car to drive. Why would I give them an iPhone?
right.
Hello.
Now,
Absolutely
now
not.
on the flip side of that, I might start training my 11-year-old or my 12-year-old what driving looks like, with me being present and me walking them through and me giving them opportunities to start navigating what driving looks like. But
Yeah.
I'm still not giving you full access to everything because you don't have a license, but we could start looking at it, and we could start
Yeah.
walking through what that looks like. What is the safety for, what does it look like for that? But yeah, why would we do that? See, then that's setting them up for failure. A 5-year-old does not know how to navigate complex, systematic, social, emotional worlds. No, 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 no.
Right. And then the thing about that is, if they have the latest thing like an iPhone 13 and they get around older kids, somebody's going to take it from them because they don't have the latest. They don't have the iPhone 13 and they want it. So they can bully them and take it from them. And then
And
they
it,
still don't have the iPhone.
exactly, exactly. And then what are you doing? I mean, if you can't pay for it or help pay for it, or I mean, I'm just pretty practical like that. I just no. Mm-mm.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Just puts you in
Yeah.
a position to be so vulnerable to so many things.
Right. And at that age, it's like you're never away from your parents or any adult long enough that you need a phone, let alone something that expensive. I mean, that's just nonsensical. As they get, 11, 12, a burner phone is good. You can call people, you know, you have access to the world around you, and your parents if you need it. But, 11, 12, not
Hmm.
5, no, especially
Yeah,
not an expensive phone. Those are things you have to earn.
there
That's
you
a
go.
responsibility, So as a parent, you again, with age appropriateness.
So I have to add this because I think it's funny. My grandson, who is 11, when he was 1, my daughter used to give him her phone to play games on, and he would, he knew how to go to the Play Store and download games. So he would look at me and say, "Download game, Granny, download game." I'm like, this child is 1. How can he, how does he know? What does he know about downloading game? But he'd go to the Play Store, click on it, and then pick the game he wanted, download it. 1, so
Yeah.
we have to be very careful about the things, that kids are doing on phones and about giving them access at such early ages. They
Right.
need, a certain amount of access.
And we
Mark,
go, oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna
I was
say
going
we have we both got a delay somewhere. It's all
go
good.
ahead.
Who's saying what? Where we at?
I apologize. I was
Oh,
going to
you're
ask him to put that comment back up, but go ahead and say whatever you were going to say.
We have to remember that between those ages of 0 to 5, a lot of critical social, emotional development is taking place.
Yes.
To put a whole lot of extra stimuli on top of that phase and space in a child's life where they're technically out of the womb, but they're in a new womb, and it's
Yeah.
called life, the womb of life.
Yeah.
Uh, that just sets them up for a lot of complexities that, in my opinion, they just don't need. I know that they're cutting edge kiddos. I mean, they're 2-year olds that know what's going on. I would flip that and redirect that. Let's get them involved in things that are going to help them develop in that age appropriate place and space.
Yes.
There are all
Yes.
kinds of games. There are all kinds of things that'll help them. They're learning how to read. They're learning how to write. They're learning about geography. Let's expose them to music. Let's expose them to art. Let's do things that are age appropriate with these devices and outlets to help them in that stage where they're most vulnerable and they're growing the most.
Yeah. Something that's really going to help them develop in life, uh, develop beyond where they are. Mark, would you put that comment back up, please? I agree with there being a healthy balance. However, I don't agree that children under the age of 12 need a cell phone. Granted, I don't have kids, but I work with kids grades 1 through 5. I would allow them devices, example, iPad, DS, tablet with designated time frames and days of usage.
Mhm.
Any comments on that? Thank you,
I
Brene.
I do have a comment because there are some children that are emotionally more mature. And I mean, just to kind of cookie cut it, I think generally speaking, I agree with that, but there are some exceptions. There are some children that come from homes where they're kind of the oldest, their maturity level is appropriate. Even in the state of Kansas, if your kid is 11 and they're solid, meaning they're mature, they can stay at home by themselves and it's not illegal. And
Right.
so I think you have to be very careful when you generalize things. I mean, I know we do that
Yeah.
as professionals. My background is early childhood. I get it. I taught, I substitute taught. I did student teaching in the schools. I thought I was going to be a teacher, but that's not where I
Yeah.
wound up going. So I
Yeah.
do understand exactly where she's coming from, but we have to remember that sometimes there are kids that don't fit into those boxes and they
Yeah.
are able to handle the responsibility in a very mature way of how to navigate through phones and working through systems and things like that. So we have to take that into account as well, because if we generalize, then we can fall into a place where we're kind of actually using power and control over those kiddos
Yeah.
that really have proven that they are mature and they
Yeah.
can handle the responsibilities. I do think it's a case by case scenario, and we have to look at the individual child sometimes when
Yeah.
that presents itself.
Yep.
That's
Agree.
good. Jen, you want to add anything?
No, I was just saying I agree. I agree with that.
There's another comment. Seems like a lot of peer pressure is out there for even the kids to have the latest toys, whether modern phone style or um, Oculus set. I don't know what that is. I no kids, no young kids. I don't know what that is.
I think
um,
that's one of the virtual reality things, if I'm not mistaken,
okay.
to that particular outlet that he was talking about earlier.
But
Yeah.
there is a lot of peer pressure with having the latest technology, the latest hairstyles, the latest clothes, so fads. Um, and so that is tough on kids that, like I mentioned earlier about socioeconomic status, those that aren't able to have those kind of things, or their hair is unkempt and all of that. Those are people that are more vulnerable to being bullied because they don't have the latest and they can't afford the latest. So then people would bully them more, especially if that bully has the latest, whatever it is.
Another thing that I see, and I agree completely with you, Stephanie, I really do. Another thing that I see is that we have socially awkward children because parents have not, or leaders, or uncles or aunts, because we're a village raising a village, right?
Right.
They've not taken the time to set them up for success. For instance, if you see a kiddo that's in that stage of development between, I'm going to say, your preteens, they call them tweens, I think, that
Hmm.
Right.
preteen, you're like, it can start as early as 9, but it's probably more prevalent around 11 ish.
Yeah.
to about, I'd say about 11 to 14. So their bodies are changing, things are shifting. You have different odors that are, more aware during that time. You're more aware of them. Uh, I think it's important that when we see kiddos that maybe they're not able to connect, maybe they don't have really good social cues, they're not really good with social norms, they're kind of socially awkward because they don't really communicate that well, that we set those kids up for success as leaders by making sure that we're getting involved with them, we're initiating relationship with them, we're taking the time to be available and to be a voice in that child's life to help them. You know what? Your body, kids are, what I love about children is they're okay with you telling the truth.
Yeah.
Adults may have a problem, but children, it's like, I didn't recognize.
Mhm.
You know, so we have to have relationship where we can be transparent, we can be honest. Johnny, I'm smelling something today. Do you smell that? Or
Yeah.
Susie, I've noticed that this is going on. Have you noticed that? Let me show you how this needs to work.
Yes.
Remember, you may be the one person
Hmm.
that is able to be that line of defense and to kind of ward off bullying just by getting involved in that child's life. It's so important that we take our roles responsibly and do what we need to do as influencers.
It's
Right.
very important to provide guidance, like you said, to provide the tools, to provide the information, to help them and guide them in the right direction from wherever they are that might not be in a good place. So, like you said, by letting them know, I mean, they smell it too, if it's a smell, for example, but letting them know, I smell this. So, let me help you. It's about being compassionate, knowing somebody needs help and helping them.
Right.
So, we have to want to provide the help, to people that need it and not, shy away from it and not want to talk about it. I mean, how does that help anybody? Where is love? You
Mm.
know, where is it?
And also going back to the question, talking about peer pressure. I think one of the things that I think it's more prevalent now, but we need to teach kids, and we talked about this before, to not only accept others but accept themselves.
Yes.
That's a huge part, because we're all going to be different. Regardless of where you are, you're different from someone else. We all are unique, and we
Right.
have to be taught to embrace that.
Yeah.
Again, in ourselves and with others around us, and with that, it kind of eliminates the opportunity for bullying to transpire.
Yeah, because they're no longer a target when they can love themselves and they're well adjusted within their own selves. They're comfortable with their own voice. They're comfortable with their own preferences. They've been encouraged that if they don't want to participate in something, you know what? Your voice matters.
Yeah.
And so, no, you don't have to do that thing. Now, you may have to do something else you don't want to pertaining to life skill development, but that thing over there that you don't feel a settling about, that's not allowing you the safe place to express who you are, no, you don't have to do that. You do not
Yeah.
have to do that. And that is validating them. That is putting them in a place where they can feel empowered to be able to work their own choice, which is important.
Yeah. And what Jean just shared is self-bullying. When you're putting yourself down and you're, degrading yourself, that's self-bullying. Jean, you want to add to self-bullying?
Yeah. So we talked about acceptance, and obviously the opposite is self-effacing acts, and constant comments, and the what do you call it, the tape, the mm,
Self-talk.
right, thank you, the
Mhm.
self-talk, where you're constantly putting yourself down. We talk about the law of attraction, but you only attract what you put out constantly. So you're constantly telling yourself that you're ugly, that you're not smart, this, that, or whatever, then you attract things into your life that only uh, create that foundation, or manifest that in your life. So again, just going back to the self acceptance and accepting others, um, and feeding yourself positive words, affirmations, doing things that make you feel confident in yourself, make you feel strong, make you feel um, powerful. I think is
Yeah.
very important. And like I said, when you hear that negative feedback in your own head, replace it with something positive so that you can create an environment or a gravitational pull towards you having that positive thing that you truly desire. Because I mean, no one wants to have that negative playback in their head over and over again. That's misery. That's misery.
Yeah.
And it's interesting
And
that you would say that. A lot of times, by the time we I know you guys have heard this phrase, let's work with our children now, because it's easier to create healthier children than to try and heal broken adults, right?
yeah.
Right.
A lot
Yeah.
of some of the times I see folks, and the very thing that we're doing is deconstructing the negative self-talk, replacing it with positive affirmations, and really kind of gutting out the self-sabotage that happens as a result of the
Yes.
negative self-talk. It is huge. It is huge, because what you think affects what you feel. How you feel affects directly your behavior, what you're doing.
Right.
And we have got to really take our responsibility as being a part of the elders in the village called raising children. Somebody made a comment yesterday that just really spoke to my heartstrings, because they said, it's not everybody's kid individually, it's our children
Yeah.
collectively. It doesn't matter what race they are, where they come from. I'm that mama to everybody. If I see kids that are in crisis, I am available to get involved and to help redirect that. Me personally, I'll drive by the parks. And if I see a group of kids when school gets out and I feel like they're kind of trying to bully, I'll stop my vehicle and I'm looking. And I've had to go walk up to the park. What are we doing here? What's
Right.
going on here? I'm that type of mama. I'm not just a mama to my kids. I'm a
Yeah.
mama to children,
To the
period.
Yeah.
community, yeah, absolutely.
And that's great, because that is part of being the village. You see something wrong, you say something, you help out, you have compassion, help fix that situation. So and while y'all are talking about affirmations and the way we talk to ourselves, we have to also remember that there's power in the life, in your tongue. So what you
Life
say,
and death is in
that's
the
what
power
you're
of the
gonna
tongue,
get.
right?
Yeah, life and death are in the power of the tongue. So if you're speaking life, that's what you're gonna get. If you're speaking death and negative and beating yourself up, that's what you're gonna get. So um, we have a few comments here. Some kids like to find their own identity as teenagers, whether through tattoos or clothes, style or hairstyles. How do we encourage kids to have their own voice and not be targets of bullying as teenagers?
I think it goes back to relationship. And to be honest, if we are to be very honest, a lot of things can be just eradicated by having healthy foundations and knowing how to be relational with someone. It ain't got to be a whole lot of people, but you need to have the ability to be connected and have relationship. And as you move through those adolescent years, that's a very vulnerable stage. A lot of times we see parents, they're just not as available. But one of the things that I see that is very helpful is knowing what's going on in your community. There are so many community organizations that really highlight, and their target area is for that adolescent age. They are providing them with resources. They're providing them with opportunities to go see things, to learn new things, to be educated about things. If they have a specific hobby or interest in furthering their careers, they have resources and mentorship available. The school is a wealth of information. Even if Sometimes the system within the schools are not always, some of them are subpar. We know this, right? Irregardless to that, there are individuals, liaisons that are in the schools that are points of contact that have multiple resources as far as community organizations, churches, agencies that can help support the needs of that particular population. So I would tell folks, get really involved, find out what's going on in your community to help to be those extra arms of support to wrap around your young people.
That's good information, because definitely as teenagers, they're looking for different things and different outlets, different ways um, to be what they want to be, or to be, to be a better them. And sometimes those choices are the wrong choices. They're looking for attention, is what I should have said. Looking for attention and love in all the wrong places. And so they end up doing different things, whether under peer pressure, or just looking for something different. I want somebody to pay attention to me. I mean, if the parents don't have time, or if they're, the the people older than them aren't available for them to talk to and for them to spend time with, then they're going to look for other people. And sometimes those things may be in alcohol, or in smoking cigarettes, or drugs, because that's getting them the attention they want. And they think, some of them, may think, this is the love I've been looking for, this is the attention. So it's very important to get engaged, to get involved in the lives of our children, and then to say something when we see other children that are not our children, to say something to help them. If they're not doing the right thing, or are in a place where they're not making a good choice, we can open our mouth and say something. I mean, in order to help everybody, that's what we have to do. You know, um, because as long as you're not trying to destroy somebody, or tear somebody down, we really need to get our minds together to help people, and not this thing of, I don't want nobody to say nothing to my kid. Well, are you saying something to your kid? I mean, really,
Right.
because if you were, then maybe this wouldn't be happening. You need to get more involved. And yeah, we're busy, we're working, we're doing things, but teenagers especially, need our help. And as I stated earlier in the show, children ages 5 to 12, there are more of them committing suicide and attempting suicide. So we really need to get involved. We really need to open our mouths and speak. We need to love on one another and share love and compassion and kindness and be honest. We have to do those things. Those are things that are very necessary to help other people. Y'all want to
Yeah.
add anything?
Yeah. I was going to say, I want to reiterate um, that involvement is paramount. You have to be involved. You have to be engaged. In a situation where you have a teenager, allow them the space to be creative and do things that they enjoy, while also being the balance. Um, yeah, you have to be the balance. You need to be the sounding board, and also equip them with the tools to know that they're powerful. Um, the more powerful that they know they are, the less likely they have situations where they would be bullied.
Yeah.
Because again, we all know that bullies only attack those who they feel they are stronger than.
Hmm.
Yes.
So
I
Yes.
have something I want to say. This is an example. I have a very, I guess, what you would consider a rainbow family. We're very diverse ethnically. Um, when you look at my family, we are all shades and everything, and I love it. It's just what I wanted. It's just what, I was blessed with that. My child, well, she's not my youngest, she's the middle child. When she was a lot younger, very observant, very dark skinned, beautiful young girl. But in the school that she was in, it was an at-risk school, and they just kind of had their own idea of what students of color kind of do. And so she would sit in the back of the classroom. She wouldn't say anything. She would just look. And I noticed that when I came in for her, parent teacher conferences, the teacher was kind of making some inferences that I knew were just not wasn't my kid. So I asked my daughter, I said, what's going on? And she began to tell me what was going on. Very clear what was going on. Well, the teacher just thinks this. She was having a dynamic going on with her and that teacher in the classroom where there was some comments that have been made by the teacher that were kind of intimidating. There was a form of power control starting to get revved up in that classroom. And so, what I told my daughter, this is third grade, I said, look, the very first thing I need you to do is figure out how you're going to have a voice with this teacher. If you don't feel comfortable speaking to her, if you don't see a space where you can speak to her, write a note. When you've done what you need to do, then I'm going to come in and I'm going to back you and support you. So that is exactly what my daughter did and in third grade. And then we wound up having a meeting where all of us came together. And I began to speak to this teacher about the importance of her listening to what my daughter was saying, because although she wasn't talking, she was watching and she was very intellectual. I mean, just don't assume because she's a dark female that she's not tapped in, plugged in, and has something to say about how she's being treated in this room. It was the birthing place for my daughter to learn to use her voice, because lots of
Yeah.
scenario situations that she's in, she is the only woman of color. She's a young woman now, and she speaks to legislative people. She speaks to
Wow.
business owners. She speaks to bosses. And so it's important as a parent that you give your child the tools to know how to have their own voice, to
Yes.
empower them to do their part in these organizational structures and systems. And the color is
Absolutely.
just one thing. It could show up in any way, shape, or form. They're going to have a voice and they need to
Yeah.
be comfortable with who they are sooner than later.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Creating that firm foundation for them so that when they go out into the world, they know their power and they will not let anyone intimidate or manipulate or control them. That, like you said, give them the tools automatically. Give them that firm foundation.
And if you don't
And
have
if
it as
you,
a parent, get involved in a community organization. The Boys and Girls Club is phenomenal. There's others, I'm sure. Rise Up for Youth, Real Men, Real Heroes, Camp Destination.
Hmm.
There are just so many. I think another one is called Flashpoint Youth. There's some stuff going on in our community that can be a supplement for parents that just don't have it. Maybe
yeah,
you're stressed. Maybe you've got a house full of kids and you just don't know what you're doing from one day to the. Get involved in your school and in your community. There's help.
that's
Yep,
great. That
absolutely.
is great. Well, this has been a great show. We have provided a lot of information on this show. Allysa, your information was very helpful. Coco, I saw your your message, um, adding to to what I said. Are you teaching your kids what's right, or are you helping your kids, and where are you? I don't remember exactly what the comment said, but it was piggybacking on to what I said. We have to be able to help our kids. We have to empower them, to give them a voice. Thank you, Mark. Right. Are you saying something to your kids? So if you're saying something to your kid, then I don't have to. So we have to be able to help each other too. Yes, because I've definitely had some challenges as a dark skinned lady. So thank you, Allysa, for sharing that information to help Coco. I mean, to see for her to comment on it and add to having those challenges as well. We have had a phenomenal show. You have joined in with us on Where is the Love Show. We talk about bullying versus love. Allysa shared about trauma, how to deal with trauma, and gave so much information. Listen, if you didn't watch this, watch it again and again And again, there's three. This is our episode 4. We have 3 other episodes where we've talked about bullying. Where's the love? We've talked about love. We've shared impacts about bullying, effects of bullying. We've shared so much information and stories. Allysa, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for sharing the information that you shared. Um, Jean, we wish you, everybody, we wish you, we send love, love, Jean, joy, and peace your way. Thank you for joining in the show. Have a good day. That's it, Mark.